Welcome back to Beyond the Monsters. And today I have Sarah Benedict with me. She came from Alabama, drove here this morning. She, her story, it's a big one. Trigger warning: murder, suicide, rape, and other explicit content. Okay, Sarah. So, you have such an incredible story, and it's going to be long because there's a lot involved. You have your husband who recently committed suicide about a year and a half ago, but you have such a history with him going so far back to when was she his wife or girlfriend?
Wife.
When his first wife was murdered.
Yes.
When he was only 20 years old.
I know.
And they had a daughter, and there's just so much involved with that. So why don't we start, if you want, like from high school?
Yeah.
Because you've known him since high school.
I mean, that's kind of where we have to start.
Yeah.
It's his whole story. So basically, Andrew moved to Texas when he was, I think, about 13 or 14 years old from Virginia. And so, he and his family moved here trying to create a new life, just normal job opportunities, things like that. So he started at our school in Farmersville. Now, I started there from like pre-K. And that's kind of how these small towns in Texas go. Like, you move somewhere as a child, you start from pre-K up and you start learning who everyone is and knowing everyone. And so Rachelle, which was his first wife, I mean, she was in my sister's grade. I have an older sister, and they were in the same grade. And, typical small town, we all just knew everybody. So we were going, through elementary school, through middle school, and then Andrew moves into town. And, he's kind of cute. Like, everyone's like, oh, who's the new kid in town? And, even guy friends were like, oh, who's this new guy? He skateboards and he does all these different things. And so everyone was very interested in him. And he was also in my sister's grade. And so, so for me, I really wasn't paying too close attention to him per se, but that's kind of how he started to become incorporated into our town. New kid on the block, skateboarder, difference, things like that. Well, so I mean, like, everything was normal. I mean, it was just a normal kid moving in from out of state to our town and him mingling and meshing with everyone. And he met Rachelle. And I mean, I don't think either one of them really dated too many other people. I mean, they immediately had a connection. And they were together all through high school. And I mean, sure, there was like other boys that crushed on her and there was other girls that crushed on him, but they always like just kept gravitating back towards each other. And so, in a small town, you're like, okay, well, they're just together. Don't mess with them. They're just together.
Don't get involved in that.
Yeah, don't get involved. And, that's just how everyone viewed them. They were just the cute little couple that was always together. And Rachelle, I think she wanted to do different things in life. She didn't exactly, I think, wanted to do like the whole graduate from high school, go to college stuff. I think she was more interested in like cosmetology or, doing things like that. Like, she had family members that were hairdressers, and I think she was going down that route. And, but Andrew, like, he went ahead and graduated high school, but they were still together. And, right after that, that's when they got pregnant.
Okay.
So, of course, it's a small town, and everyone's like, oh, they're pregnant now.
Right.
So it was kind of like, it was one of the first teenage pregnancies, too. Or not teenage, but, like very young pregnancies in the town. So everyone was always like, paying attention to those things.
Sure.
But when they did get pregnant, no one was like surprised. I mean, like, everyone was like, of course they're starting a family.
Right.
Like, they've been together, they're madly in love with each other. Of course they're going to start a family. But at the same time, they were very young, very young. I mean, they had no time to experience any kind of life. I mean, what do you do right out of high school and then get pregnant? And so there was a lot of pressure for them to get married immediately when they found out that they were pregnant. And that's what they did. I think they were both trying to do the right thing by getting married so young. But I think it just put an incredible pressure on their relationship. And, like they obviously started having some problems because of that. Like, you went from boyfriend and girlfriend, high school, this is fun, to, oh my God, we're adults.
Yeah.
And we got pregnant and now we're married. And I think
Did they live together already when
they were living with her parents. So, again, they didn't even have the time or space to save up to even buy a house or, have really good jobs to even afford a home at the time.
Sure.
I mean, they were barely
So
making
young.
it.
Yeah.
So young. And both of them. And so, but there was an incredible pressure for them to figure it out all of a sudden. And
pressure from the whole town.
yeah, pressure from the whole town.
Yeah.
Because like, for her parents, it was like, well, we want her to be taken care of. And, for him, he's like, well, gosh, I'm still a child myself. Like, how am I supposed to start taking care of a wife and a family?
Right.
So there was just like an incredible pressure right from the beginning for him to just figure it out. So obviously, like I said, that kind of just created a rift between the two of them. And I think they just started bickering and fighting, and they started growing apart. And honestly, like right after Avery was born, they both just kind of decided, I think we need to separate.
Okay.
I mean, it was a very fast thing. It was a very fast, we're pregnant, let's get married, to a very much so, there's a child now and this isn't working.
Right.
So it was all very traumatic to hear about because, obviously we're in everyone's business. It's
right.
a small town. And, and so for even me to hear about it through the grapevine, even though, yes, I was mutual friends with everybody, I still wasn't like, in their day to day.
Right.
Like I was having my own life. I was 2 years younger. I actually decided to graduate high school a year early because I was like, I got to get out of this town. Like this town is small. Mm-hmm. And so I graduated to high school early just to get out of town because I knew that there was more to explore.
Right.
So I started going to college in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was beach bumming it up. I was having fun.
Right.
I was doing my life. But yeah, to hear, I mean, everyone knew about their story. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like watching a soap opera.
I'm sure.
And so with that being said, what happened next was just like traumatic. It was like the next scene of the soap opera became very traumatic for both of them. And the whole town was just basically shocked what happened. So anyway, what happened was, so, they were separating during this time.
Okay.
And she had just gotten a rental home in downtown Farmersville where we all grew up because, I think her parents were trying to help her get her feet on the ground, get her independent and things like that. And so, she was trying to live on her own and figure things out. Well, we had this friend that we all grew up with, right? I mean, like, this friend was in my sister's grade also. He was 2 years older than me. His name was Moses. And like I said, we do the whole pre-K up. We all knew each other.
Right.
I mean, and his sister was in my grade. I mean, we're all very close. We all knew each other. We all knew where each other lived, who our parents were.
Families, everything.
Yeah, everything. I mean, we all went to school functions together, sports, all sorts of stuff. Well, this guy just kind of... Before I even moved to Corpus Christi, I would be hanging out with this crowd, and he was just always the guy who would start trouble. Like we would be, drinking at field parties or something, and he would be the one to start a fight. He would be the one to just start talking trash to someone.
To someone, right.
And we all just chalked it up as, all right,
Like when he was drinking, he would do it? Or
yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, we would just chalk it up as, all right, he's a little unhinged,
Right.
Like, we're all a little unhinged here and there.
He's entertainment.
Yeah. Like, we would all be like, cut it out. It's time to go home.
Right.
But, like, it never, yes, it would, like, escalate a lot, but I don't think any of us knew he was dangerous until it started getting dangerous.
Okay.
So, he was the type of guy who, yes, he would start fights and yes, he would do this, but I think his behavior became more and more erratic, as time grew on. And
like how old right now, like when you're starting to see that?
So he was the same age as Rachelle and Andrew, like
So
20
like
years old.
20-ish. Okay.
And, like I said, I moved to Corpus, but I would come back and visit.
Right.
So I decided to come back and visit for spring break when this tragedy happened with what happened. And, we did the whole thing, spring break, let's go have a lot of parties. Let's
Right.
have a party in each town all across.
Yeah.
And let's all get together. And, so I went to a couple of parties that Moses was at. And yeah, I mean, like, I could tell he was erratic. He was drinking a lot. But to me, since I was just visiting, I was like, well, he's just being himself.
Right.
He's just doing his same old crap.
Yeah.
you know?
Like the same shit you've seen
Yeah.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah. And like even before I moved, there were some moments where he even would get violent with, or rough with girls, like even me. But even still then, I was just kind of like, he's just being a jerk. He's just being himself.
Right.
Like there wasn't really a moment where I was like, he could take it to that level until he took it to that level.
Yeah.
And so when I visited for spring break, we went to a party and we were all there and we were drinking and he was just very erratic. And there was other girls at the party. And like I said, he would just kind of erratic and rough behavior with women.
Like what would he do?
Like he would just say the most crazy things. Like even that night at the party, he was like threatening two girls there. Like, physically. And my guy friends were all just like,
Really?
you got to cut it out. Same story, like he would get erratic, he would
Yeah.
start crap, and guys at the party would be like, you got to cut it out.
But it was like it was just when he was drinking.
It was just when he was drinking most of the time. And, and that's the thing, when you grow up with someone, you're just like,
Right.
like this is just
That's
what
them.
he does.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
them. You don't ever think, oh my gosh, like this could escalate into something violent or
Right.
anything.
Right.
So anyway, like that night at the party, yes, he was being very erratic with these two girls there and he was talking trash. But, I'm just visiting. I'm just trying to have a good time.
Right.
Like I'm trying to socialize, catch up with everyone. So I'm like, kind of paying attention, but not.
Right.
And he left the party that night and he was gone for a few hours and he'd show back up and then he'd be gone for a few hours and he'd show back up. And, when then eventually it just got too late and we all either went back home or, I can't remember what I ended up doing. I think I just ended up going back home. But that was the night that he decided to stop by Rochelle's house and see what she was doing. And
Now, were they like friends normally, or it's just kind of how you said everybody knew everybody?
so yeah,
but-
like from what I knew and what I feel too, because I am intuitive about the situation. And, of course there's lots of rumors and there was
yes.
lots of rumors that they were hooking up and all this stuff. But man, I mean, the more and more I talk to people about it, the more it sounds like that he was just very interested in her, wanted to be with her. And she was like, I just had a baby.
Right.
Like, because I've had kids.
Right.
And 5 months after you have a baby, you don't want anyone touching
Right.
you.
Exactly.
And so I think she was just trying to have a lot of boundaries with him, being like, I'm literally postpartum.
right.
Like, don't touch me.
And just getting out of a marriage.
Yeah, and
too.
exactly, like, she's not even technically divorced. They're
Right,
just
right.
separated. And so I think she just was very, stern with her no. And he was so erratic that was just not going to fly. And he took it upon himself to be with her.
Oh.
And so that night he went over there and, basically kind of, there's a question of breaking in. I mean, I'm sure, and that's the thing, we're all friends. So I'm sure she was like, what's he doing here?
Right.
Probably let him in.
Now what? Yeah.
Yeah, probably let him in or something. Who knows? But like, there was an altercation. It looked like he was going to have his way whether she liked it or not.
Right.
And, so
The baby's there.
the baby's there. Yeah. She's on the bed. And from the police reports, it looked like that there was, an altercation that she was trying to get away from him. And then he took her out to his truck, and that's where the actual murder took place. And,
So he like raped her inside
That's from
took
what,
her,
yeah.
then took her
Like,
out to the car?
basically, there's so much. I feel like there was a lot of different things going on, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, the police reports are probably going to say, okay, this is where this happened, this is where that
Right.
happened. But it looked like, yeah, I mean, it looked like there was forced sex,
Right.
you know, rape going on. Even the DNA reports confirm that,
Okay.
you know, when they found her body and everything. And so
Right.
there was definitely that going on. But then I think it was just multiple times where he was just angry and was violent with her. I mean, there was strangulation, there was a stab wound in her neck. I mean, there was lots of different things that happened in order for her to die.
Maybe it's like he snapped from not getting his way, and then he like rapes her, does whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's no going back.
There's no going back. Yeah, and so he just became a violent monster.
Yeah.
You know, so what happened after that is, you know, like I said, it's spring break. Everyone's at different parties.
Right.
You know, even Andrew was at a different party that night.
Right.
And so no one was really paying attention to see if she was okay. It's not like there was like a nighttime watch back then or anything.
Yeah.
And it's crazy too, because the house that she lived in was literally like 2 blocks away from the police department. I mean, like, this just happened right in the middle of town. And so, but yeah, Moses just became a, you know, a violent person. Or, I mean, he already was a violent person, but that night he became a killer.
Right.
And he killed her. And so that's the thing. I think after he did that, he freaked out and took her body and tried to hide it. Well, that he did do that. He took her body and hid the body. And because
Wow.
I think he was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do?
Did they ever say like what actually killed her? Was it when he stabbed her, like in
Yeah.
the throat? Or-
Yeah. It was I think that's what the coroner or the autopsy report
yeah.
said, that it was that actually.
That was fatal. Yeah. Oh my God.
So he took her body to, I believe, his home at first and tried to
Baby's
hide.
just at home now.
Yeah, baby's just at home. So, okay, so yeah, like, so he takes her away. So now Avery, this baby, this 5-month-old baby, is just laying in bed all day, or laying in bed all night by herself. Rachelle's mom was the one who was like, I can't get a hold of her. Like, how come I can't get a hold of her? So she went over there to.
Is this like morning?
This is morning.
Okay.
Yeah. So she went over there being like, where is she? Why isn't she responding? And she finds Avery on the bed and she's all wet, you know, because she's a baby.
Right.
And cold, doors
Probably
open.
hungry, like, oh
Yeah,
my God.
crying. And so,
The door was left open?
yeah,
Just-
I mean, nothing was locked, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's a miracle that Avery was okay. That Avery wasn't injured in all of this, you know, because she
Yeah.
could have easily, and, you know, Moses could have easily been like, you know what, I just killed the mom, might as well kill the baby.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, it was almost like there was just this protection around Avery at that time that he maybe wouldn't notice her
Thankfully.
or even think to do anything with her. I mean, it's really a miracle.
Right.
And so, but yeah, Rachelle's mom came over and found Avery like that. So obviously she was like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
Like, why is there furniture all over the place? Why is the bed moved? Why is all this stuff in disarray? And so obviously she panics, you know?
Right.
And that's when basically the whole town was alerted, like something had happened. And so literally this was like, so, you know, I was in town. And I remember, I think my flight was like 2 days after that to go back to school and, you know, just get out of there again.
Right, right.
And when I was leaving, that's when like things started coming to light. Like, hey, something happened. Rochelle's missing and all that kind of stuff. But I'm flying out. So I'm like, well, I don't know what happened, you know, but see y'all later.
Right.
Like, I got to
I'm
go
getting
back to
back out of here.
school. Yeah. And so, you know, and of course in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's just a situation where they'll find her, you
Right,
know,
right.
like it's just probably.
Definitely not thinking.
No,
What
no one
actually
ever
happened,
thinks,
yeah.
no one ever thinks first right off the bat that something terrible happens like that. You think, oh, you know, maybe she drank and passed out at someone's house or, you know, like something like
Right.
that. Like you just think kids are being kids and something irresponsible happened, but not a murder.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So even when I was leaving, it was just kind of like this, oh, I heard that this is going on, but I'm sure she's fine. They'll find her. She's probably just somewhere, or whatever.
Right.
So I get back to Corpus. I'm, doing, and the friends are calling. Oh my gosh, she's still missing. They're actually out searching for her. They're in fields with four-wheelers looking for her. And I'm like, what is going on there? You know? And I'm calling more friends, being like, trying to get more information because I literally just saw these people.
Right.
And so everyone is kind of the same thing. We don't know what's going on, but it is a wild, crazy environment here because there's cops everywhere. There's state troopers everywhere. There's firefighters everywhere looking there. I mean, there's people coming in from outside of Texas trying to find her.
Help,
yeah. And so everyone's freaking out at this point.
And nothing's probably happened like this before, right?
Nothing
in your town.
has ever happened like that before in that town or even in that area.
Right.
I mean, this is 2004 when this happened, and before social media, before murder podcasts,
right,
and,
right.
before all these
exactly.
true crime things. I mean, like we all just were like, we literally all probably thought first when everything was happening that she literally just ran away for a second.
Right.
Maybe the pressure was too much and she stayed with a friend in Plano or Dallas or something.
Right.
Like you don't think something terrible and tragic happened to her.
Right.
Especially not from someone from your own town that you grew up with.
Right.
And
just the fact that her baby was there, alone. It's just.
Well, and that's everyone was really like thrown off by that because, even though Rachelle was a young mother, she was known to be a good mother. She never left her kid anywhere.
Right.
I mean, she didn't let anyone babysit. It's not like she was the girl who was like, yeah, take my kid for 2 days. That way I can go party somewhere. Like she would not do that. And everyone knew that about her. And so it was strange how it happened. And it was strange how, furniture was everywhere and no one could put it together. Mm-hmm. So it was just crazy. And so, I'm getting phone calls and I'm calling other people being like, update me on what's going on. Well, then that's when about 4 days later, someone called me and they were like, they found out who did it and it was Moses. And, actually my first reaction was like, of course it was Moses, because we all just knew kind of how crazy he was.
Yes.
But then I was like, oh my God, like he actually went to that level and he actually took someone's life like that.
Is he like missing at this point too, or?
So it's crazy because right before I left for Corpus, we all, got together again at a house party and he was there. And he was like, I hope they find her. I mean, he was acting like everyone else. Yeah, I'm going to go look for her. Blah, blah, blah. So when I think back on that,
I'm like,
oh my
shit.
gosh.
Yeah.
Like you literally just lied to my face.
Right.
Like sitting right by me.
Was he acting more like well-behaved at that point?
Yeah. At that last time I saw him, he was very like, concerned. Like, oh yeah, we're going to find her. We'll find her. And now I'm like, you did it.
Right.
What do you mean we're going to find her, So it was just the craziest feeling of being like, oh my gosh. For one, I've been hanging out with a murderer for,
total psychopath.
Like a total psychopath for years,
Yeah.
But we all were.
Right. Gosh, I guess pay more attention to the ones that act crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, don't just chalk it up as something like there really could be a murderer sitting right next to you and you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
And see, the crazy thing is, during that time, it was 2004, like I said, what show was very popular at that time? Jackass.
Oh.
We're all messing around.
Right.
We're all lighting firecrackers underneath people's chairs.
Right.
We're all, spraying, fire, hydrant stuff on each other. Yeah. I mean, like, we're just being silly.
Right.
So, the erratic behavior was popularized. Oh, I can't even say it. The erratic behavior was kind of taken as a normal thing back then because of those shows. Mm-hmm. And Bam Margera and Skater and and
poor
that was
Bam. Have you seen him lately? Oh,
I know.
Gosh.
I know.
But pay attention.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
But you see, that's the thing with Andrew brought in that Skater vibe. So we were all watching skater stuff, and we were
Right.
all over at each other's houses playing Tony Hawk. On, you know, like I
Yeah.
mean, we're just being
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
goofing off.
Right.
So you don't think with that being in that environment, you're like, oh, we're just being impressionable. You know, we're just being kids. We're
Right.
watching these shows of other people being erratic. You know, snorting wasabi. You know, like, we're just watching them do it, so then we get some
Right.
cute ideas
Yeah.
about doing something like that
Yeah,
too.
you think you want to be cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the problem. The problem was we were just kind of marking up his behavior as
Like throw it in there with the rest of it.
just something that we were just experiencing as a culture.
Right.
You know. So yeah, when he did that, it was just very shocking. It was very real.
Now your husband though, they thought at first that he was like the suspect.
Yeah,
Just
so-
because of,
Exactly.
you know,
I mean,
the relationship.
and I even talked to several police officers about this and firefighters. I mean, like, you know, first person that they're going to
Always.
suspect
Yeah.
is the estranged spouse.
Right.
And they were estranged. I
Right.
mean, they were going through a separation. They decided that this wasn't working, too much pressure on both of them as young adults. And, you know, they were separating at the time. And so Andrew was just put in a really bad situation because the cops literally were doing their job. I
Right.
don't want to badmouth the cops.
Yeah.
Even though I do have a lot of friends who have told me I think they went way too hard on him, which they could have.
Right, sure.
They could have, you know, because I really think those cops wanted someone to confess to doing something.
Well, and if this is a town that these officers and all the law enforcement there, they're not used to dealing with this shit. So
Exactly.
they're probably like, all right, it has to be him.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
let's
and
get
they,
him.
And they wanted so badly to solve it quickly.
Yeah.
You know? And so, of course, they're going to go after Andrew, and they went after him hard. You know? I mean, like, you know, and that's the thing. Andrew tried not to talk about that experience too much with me just because it was so traumatic.
Right.
But I remember him saying that one time when they were interrogating him, he just got so mad that he started, you know, throwing things. He was throwing chairs. He broke the vending machine in the room. I mean, like he was going crazy
Because they were breaking him down.
They were breaking
Yeah.
him down.
Yeah.
And can you imagine being a 20-year-old male who just had a kid, who already feels like a kind of a failure because it's like, I couldn't figure it out. My wife wants to leave me now.
Right.
And now she's missing, and they're thinking that I did something to her.
And the baby again still left there. Like all
Exactly.
the things. He had
So
to
I
be like
can't
going
imagine,
crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine what his mind was going through at the time. And I'm sure it fractured him. I'm
of
sure it
course.
just fractured his soul. I really think that the events that happened from the time she was, you know, missing to the time they found her, I think it was just those little days, those 4 days, that he completely probably lost his soul because of the extreme amount of suspicion upon him, the extreme amount of interrogation that was put on him. I mean, they even did a lie detector test, and I talked to Avery, you know, just to kind of recap on what she knew too. And she said that the police officer who drove him back from that lie detector test, I mean, he was so exhausted afterwards. He was asleep the whole time when they were taking him back home. I mean, it wiped him out.
Right.
So I can't imagine what that did to his body, what that did to his mind and his soul and
Right.
spirit.
And then you have everybody probably talking shit.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, God.
Yeah, the whole town, of course, is like, oh, they're interrogating Andrew. He probably had something to do with it.
Right, of course.
You know, and see, and that's the thing too, is 2004. It was a time of no social media. No one could sit there and be a keyboard warrior and be
Right.
like, no, I know Andrew. He didn't do
Right,
that.
exactly. It's probably a good thing too, and I say that even with my first husband's death, because mine was the end of '01,
Okay.
2001.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine the shit that people would have said. Like, good to defend,
Right.
but all the made up stories too that you'd have to deal with.
Oh,
like, I'm almost
absolutely.
thankful, like that
I
it
know.
wasn't.
See, I'm weird about it too because yeah, I am thankful it happened during a time where there wasn't like, you know, more
Yeah.
suspicion and more attention. But I think the cleanup maybe could have been a little bit
Yes.
better.
Right.
You know, if because every time I talk to anybody who really knew us, who knew Andrew, they always say he would have never done that.
Right.
He loved her so much.
So it would have been nice to put it out there later. Like, this
Yeah.
person did it. He's this, and Andrew's all these things. He would have never.
Exactly.
But you didn't have the chance to do that. Yeah.
Never had the chance to do it. And so, you know, I think Andrew died that week too. I think he never regained his innocence after that.
Right.
His spirit was gone. And, you know, it was just a sad thing that it was just a whole tragedy. And so, you know, of course, like after that happened.
How did they find her? Like, where? Like,
So that's the thing. So it was a guy who was hunting for arrowheads. Just random dude.
wow.
And he saw what looked like a body part. And he was like, oh, crap. So he called the police, and it was her. And, you know, Moses tried his best to make sure that she wasn't recognizable. And, but, you know, with dental records and things like that, I mean, like, it was her. You know, they just.
Oh, so it was like brutal.
It was brutal. I mean, he did everything he could to make sure that she did not look like a human.
Oh, my God.
And so, yeah, it was terrible to know what happened to her, how she died, what was done with her after. You know, it was horrible. It's like, you know, you don't even treat animals like that after they die.
Did he blame himself at all because he wasn't around, or
Oh, yeah.
did he go through a lot of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's several people who I've talked to who you know, not just Andrew, but friends and family who is like, oh, I should have been there that night. I actually thought to go stay the night over there that night, but I didn't. You know, like even Rachelle's parents, they were like, hey, you should just stay at our house tonight if you have a headache or something. And she was like, no, I'm just going to go. I mean, like everyone's got survivor's guilt with this,
right?
You know, so it was tragic. I mean,
God, her poor parents.
I know. I mean, like just to even think about what each person had gone through, you know, because I've been through that too, the mental gymnastics, the anxiety that happens with all of it. I mean, I can't imagine what was going on with them.
Right.
So, but it was horrible. I mean, they found her though, and that did bring a lot of peace to the community, at least to where it's like, well, we found her, you know, because you have some people who go missing and they never find their bodies.
Right.
They never get closure.
How did they figure out it was him?
So they found the body. And I think during that time, during the 4 days she was missing, they were already kind of like, wait a minute, something's not right. You know, he has an alibi. He was at a place. He's, you know, something's not lining up. So I think they were at that time in the 4 days starting to look at other people.
Okay.
And actually, so silly. So Moses actually confessed to a girl that lived in a different town. And I think it was like that day, they were like, if anyone has information, we'll give you money.
Right.
And she was like, hey.
He wasn't very smart. He wasn't very smart to go
He was not smart.
tell some random girl. But
yeah, and it was like, I think it was like a girl that he was like dating. I don't really even know, to be honest, like what their connection was. But, you know, he confessed to her and she was like, I can't sit here with this information morally. Right. But of course it helped that there was reward money. Right. But I mean, I really don't think she could have sat there much longer morally.
Right.
And been like, I got to tell somebody. So she actually went to the authorities and told them. And they were like, whoa, a lot of her story's checking out. And I think they had enough evidence at that point to get an arrest warrant.
Okay.
And they arrested him. So all of this happened very quickly.
Oh, fast. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this was literally within the 4 days, you know. And so, so they had their guy. The cops finally had their guy.
Did he admit it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he confessed to it. And it's so funny because, you know, I watched some of the videos of the confession. And, you know, it's funny. He said the same thing. He's like, I don't want the town to treat my family any different. You know, I mean, like everyone, like that just goes to show how small this town was.
Right, right.
Like even as a murderer, he was like, this town is going to like chastise my family.
Right.
And so, you know.
Too bad he didn't think about that a little earlier.
No, he didn't think about that earlier. But that goes to show too what was done to Andrew. That whole town chastised Andrew,
Right.
thought he was the murderer at first. And the problem was there was no resolve. The problem was that no one said, no, it wasn't him,
Yeah.
like for sure.
Right.
There was always this air of, well, did he have something to do with it?
Yes.
It never was, he's innocent. It was like, well, maybe he acted with Moses and did it.
They never did like an apology.
No.
Nothing.
No, it was always the story, like we all thought something, or we all thought Andrew had something to do with it. And then even when they found out it was Moses, it's still, I'm sure there was apologies, but it never stuck.
Right.
It was always like, well, someone must have acted with him. There must have been an accomplice.
Right.
There was never,
Because everybody creates their own story in their head.
and rumors and all this
Yes.
stuff. So there was never like a clean slate of innocence. And that just, I think, also killed Andrew. I mean, he never got the embodied forgiveness,
Right.
that he so desperately needed.
And he probably worried that, people are still whispering. They're still thinking this. They're
He
still,
did.
yeah.
Yeah, he did. Because, so all that happened, and it was tragic. And, of course, there was a capital murder case because the state of Texas goes hungry and hard,
Right.
with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would too. I mean, he brutally murdered someone. He should
Absolutely.
get the full extent of punishment. And so, they did the capital murder trial. He was found guilty. They decided to do the death penalty as the sentencing for that. And, everyone was kind of like in agreement. They were like, yeah, this is just. This is
Right.
the justice system working.
Right.
So, and I know everyone has their opinions about the death penalty. But in this case, a lot of people were like, no, this
Yeah.
is why we have the death penalty sometimes.
Yeah, like even me, I did forensic psych forever. So, I've dealt with all kinds of criminals, everything. My thing, and this is just my opinion with the death
Yeah.
penalty, I just think that they're getting the easy way out. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm like, they should have to fucking suffer. They should have to go
Yeah.
through everything that they did and suffer every day.
Oh, believe me, I think Rachelle's dad was very much so wanting him to get a little bit more of a punishment
Really?
than just go to jail.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sit there,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people were like, this, yes, the death penalty is just in this, but yeah, a lot of
Sure.
people were like, I want more to
Let all
happen.
that shit happen to him in there.
Yeah.
Everything he did. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I was part of that trial, because I was there that night.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I had to testify his demeanor. I had to testify, about his behavior even before that. So it's not like I was like a big part of it, but I was a voice
But
in
you were
it.
involved, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, man, even for me during that time, it was a very anxious feeling to be a part of it, because it's traumatic even for a onlooker.
Sure.
So I'm an onlooker basically kind of looking at what happened, and it traumatized me. It traumatized the whole town.
For sure. And when things like that happen, you always internalize it and think, oh my God, what if it was my family, my person,
Oh,
my
yeah.
people? And you just,
Yeah.
you're
And,
walking around in Twilight Zone.
Exactly. And we're still, all friends with each other. So,
Right.
and even a friend that I talked to yesterday just kind of jogged my memory about some stuff. I mean, he was part of the trial also. He testified. So, it impacted our friend group quite a bit. I mean, we're all very affected by what happened. And we all are, still dealing with the anxiety of it all. But yeah, we testified, and again, it was very quick for the jury to be like, hey, he's guilty,
Right, right.
and he should die. Like,
Yeah.
like it was very quick for them to come to that
Yeah.
conclusion. So when that was over with, man, I checked out. I was like, bye again. I'm
Yes.
flying out of here. I'm going to have a life.
Right.
I was with a guy for a very long time, got engaged. I mean, I thought it was behind me, right? I
Right.
thought this whole situation was behind me, but it wasn't. So I moved back to the Dallas area, and I got reconnected with all of our old friends.
Okay.
And I was, going through a rough patch in
So how old are you now?
so I was 23 now.
Okay.
And yes, I was with this guy and I was engaged, but it just wasn't feeling right. It wasn't working out. And so it was just falling apart. And we both kind of knew that. And yes, it was kind of traumatic and, but I just was like, I just, this isn't feeling right for me. So I wanted to be single. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to be in my friends group, feel safe again, just with people
Right.
who could see me, who could see me for who I was, who knew me.
Right.
And that's when I became introduced to Andrew again, because
Okay.
he was actually going through a breakup as well.
Okay.
And so we both were going through breakups, and we were like, oh, hey, how are you? Haven't seen you in a long time.
Right.
And it was just this instant connection. And it wasn't like an instant romantic connection. It was like an instant, like, I know who you are. You know who I am. Like, we're friends. Like, we're
Right.
like, we could see each other for who we were. He was very protective of me. I was very protective of him. And then everything just started happening.
Yeah.
and we got together.
Okay.
And very quickly after that, we got pregnant with Aiden, my son. So that's when it was just like, oh, we're together now.
Right.
I guess we're together now.
Right. Now, does he see the baby? Well, she's not a baby, I guess a toddler.
Oh,
Or-
yeah. So during that time, see, that's another thing that was going on. Before I came back into the picture, he was with another woman right after Rachelle.
Okay.
And thank God for her. I talked to her actually before this too. And, because I wanted to be like, what was he like during that time? And she was just like, it was so bad. Like, he was so anxious. He was so paranoid. He, really couldn't get over the fact of what happened. He was paranoid that Avery would be taken away. And during that time, I think he was trying to be there for Avery as much as he could, but with his mental health being the way he was and how he really just wasn't finding any coping mechanisms that worked.
Right.
I mean, he it's not that he couldn't parent, it's just his mental health limited him so
Well,
much.
yeah, if he can't even take care of himself.
He can't even
truly,
take care
yeah.
of himself. Yeah.
Right.
And so, Rochelle's parents basically took over with Avery. I mean,
Okay.
and so they were there for her and things like that. And man, I just really wish that's another thing with the timing of all this. So this would have been like 2005, 2006. I mean, there really just still wasn't there wasn't an acceptance of men getting therapy at that time. Men's mental health was just not really talked about.
Right.
And even like trauma language wasn't really said back then. Back then it was like, oh, well, go to therapy if you're having problems.
Right.
It's like there wasn't any science or connection back then that when something traumatic happens to you, your body goes into fight or flight or
Right.
things like that. Like now we know all those things.
Sure.
Now we know how important it is to get therapy and process repressed emotions.
Right.
But back then, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so he had no coping skills, nothing.
Nothing. And I mean, he definitely dove into work. He became a workaholic, which most men do when they become traumatized. They just dive into work. They do what feels like they can do well. And so, he...
And they have control.
And they
over
have
that.
control over
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And, and they feel like they're an accomplished person when they can work well. And so that's
Right.
what he did. He dove into work. But at the end of the day, he was still a traumatized 20-year-old boy. And, his coping back then was, drinking.
Okay.
And even, I mean, if you think about it, we all grew up field parties drinking anyway. So it's just kind of like, oh, a glass of wine at night won't hurt you. Well, it can,
Right.
after a certain
Right.
amount of time. And so, yeah, I mean, like he just worked and he drank to numb the pain. And he tried to make it work with this girl. But, from what she told me, he never felt stable. And he never felt like he could really get his footing with anything. And then, they even bought a home and they were trying to be stable, but he just was really erratic.
Right.
He just didn't know how to cope during that time. So when I came along, I didn't know anything was going on. I just thought he was fine. I thought
Right.
he, I just assumed that he got the therapy, he got help, that he was doing well because, when we got together, it was just kind of like, well, I feel safe around you. You feel safe around me. And then we immediately get pregnant. And so we're like, well, I guess we're just going to have to figure this out. But
Right.
you see, I think that was the thing with me that he liked about me. I didn't put any pressure on him. I was like, look, if you want to be here with me and this baby, you can. But if you don't want to be here, whatever. Like, I'm fine.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm going to be here. Like, he took it upon himself to show up.
Okay.
You know, he took it upon himself to, you know, make sure that we were taken care of. He always said that to me. He's like, I want to make sure that you're always taken care of. And I was like, well, heck yeah. Like,
I'll take it.
Yeah, take care of me,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so, you know, I always just kind of felt like he had it together because in my eyes, he did. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, so we both had really great jobs during the time. I mean, he had a really cool job to where we would go on vacations all the time. And, you know, we went to Mexico and cruises a lot. We brought my son Aiden. I mean, like, we just were living life. We were having fun.
How was he during that time? Like with the drinking and
You know,
things
that's
like
the
that?
thing. We both occasionally had glasses of wine at night but it wasn't bad.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't bad or anything because we were both working full time and I actually was working in the mental health field in Dallas at the time. I was a neurotherapist. I did brainwave analysis, and I was doing neurofeedback. And so, you know, it's not like I can be hammered,
Right.
like doing
Right.
doing
Right.
all of that. You know, I
Yeah.
had conferences. I was also getting my master's in counseling. You know, so I was working and going to school. We were both very driven for about 10 years.
Okay.
And he even, you know, was working, and he wanted to become a airplane mechanic.
Okay.
And I was like, heck yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it. So we found a school, and he applied for the school, and he went to school. I mean, like, we were just driven. We had goals, we had dreams.
Wow.
And we were both supporting each other with every single step that we took. It felt great. It felt like it felt like a relationship that I could really blossom in. And I think he felt that way too, that he could really become who he always wanted to be. And so everything seemed really fun. I mean, we even bought our first home together. We renovated the attic, so there was space for Avery. I mean, you know, because we were
So Avery's coming
Yeah,
for
we
visiting
saw
and-
her all through these years. We had like the standard visitation schedule. You know, everything was working really well. Everyone seemed really happy. Everyone seemed really content. You know, when Andrew was with Avery, they had their special bond. And, you know, and that's the thing with me too. I was a wife of a widower. And I was like, okay, how can I make this good for both of them? And so it was always about honoring her. It was always about honoring Rachelle's memory. I always had a little picture of her by Avery's bed. She never was not
That's
off
so
top-
important.
Yeah, she never was not off topic or anything. Like if Avery brought her up, we would discuss her, you know, and Andrew, I think it made him feel comfortable in bringing up special memories with her too with me. I mean, he felt safe that he could do that with me.
Right.
Because I was like, it's important to remember our past loved ones. And especially when it's, you know, Avery's
Parent.
mom.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I think maybe in his head he was like, well, if I move on, I can't bring her up. And it's like, no, let's incorporate her.
Right.
Right. She's part of the family too.
Yeah.
You know, let's celebrate her birthday.
Right.
You know, let's do all the things, because if I were to have passed away, I would have wanted someone to do that for me. That's what I always thought.
See, I'm the same. Like even,
Yeah.
gosh, it's been 20 some years and we still do that stuff.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's how I always treated the situation. I was like, okay, I got to put myself in her shoes and be like, if this was me, I would want my daughter's stepmom to do this for
Right.
me. So that's always how I played the game. That's always how I did
I
it.
love that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, to me, it was just like what you were supposed to do.
Right.
You know, didn't even think twice about it. And I think Andrew really loved that about me too, you know, how I incorporated her and how he was able to have those discussions with me about her. But at the same time, you could feel the wall. You could feel that there was just some things here that he did not want to talk about.
Right.
And I always honored that too, because I was like, you know, maybe he's just not ready to go there. Or maybe maybe that part of him is resolved and he doesn't want to talk about
Go
it. I'm not going to
backwards,
push
yeah.
it. Yeah. But now come to find out, it was a wall, a shield of a lot of dark repressed emotions that he never let anyone see. And that's the sad thing about it.
How do you know?
Because of what happened to him. You know, like if he would have actually resolved all of those emotions within him, I don't think he would have spiraled the way he did
Okay.
at the end. So, but anyway, Andrew was good emotionally for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so during this time of our blossoming of careers, he was like, I got a job opportunity in Alabama. And I was like, Alabama? Where's that? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I knew where Alabama was, but like, I was just like, what, And,
Yeah.
and so he was like, yeah, it's a really great job opportunity. Let's go. And I was like, okay, if you're okay with this, I'm okay with this because I'm a born traveler.
Right.
I love to go places I've never been.
Yeah.
So this was exciting for me. I was like, okay, well, let's move to Alabama. So we moved to Alabama, and everything seemed to at first be going really well. Avery decided to stay in Texas. All of her friends and social was there. I don't feel like it would have been good for her to yank her out of anything or try to convince her to come with us. I mean, she had her own life there. She had her own friends.
Right.
Just let her be.
Is she like high school?
Yeah,
then?
she's like a teenager at this
Okay.
point. So, she's just living her life. And I honor that. We respect that.
Right.
So me and also during this time I had another child with Andrew. So now we have two children together. So like we're a unit,
Right.
So he gets this job in Alabama and we head out. We go to Alabama. And everything seems to be fine even when we first get there. Of course, he's working a lot. It's a new job. I understand that. So he's gone a lot. And I'm just doing my thing. I'm taking care of the kids at home. I'm doing my own stuff. I'm meeting friends and community members and things like that. So I'm having a great old time. Well, it was around, I don't know, it was like 2 years into Alabama. That's when things started shifting with his mood.
Oh.
So he just was like, he just became very recluse. It's almost like every time he came home from work, he would rather just sit on the porch and be alone. And, for me, I was like, okay, well, I'll just make sure dinner is made for him when he's ready. And I'll just, take care of the kids, get them ready for school, because what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like be in his face all day, being like, you had a hard day at work. You need to talk to me. Like, I'm not like that,
Right.
And our whole relationship was built off friendship.
Right.
So it's kind of like, okay, I honor that you need your space. Like, take your space. But
What were you thinking though? Like,
I just honestly, at the time, I was thinking he had a rough day at work.
okay.
Or he had a lot of demands and he just needs to decompress or something. Because I was always, that's just kind of how he was anyway. Sometimes he just needed some time and space to be with himself. Then he would regroup and come back into our unit, as a family. But it was just more and more in Alabama. I just thought, oh my gosh, this job that he got must be a lot. It must be a lot of responsibilities. It must be a lot going on. And, he was working in the aviation industry, and that is a lot of stress. I remember, because he became an inspector during that time too, and I remember he would say, if I sign off on this airplane and if it crashes and kills someone, I'm going to go to prison.
Right.
So he was putting a lot of pressure on himself.
That is a lot of pressure.
It is. And I remember even one time he worked for this little airline, and one of their planes did actually crash. No one was injured, but he immediately, when he found that out, he immediately went to all the paperwork to see if he signed
was
off
on there. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, he was like, oh, thank God it was someone else.
Right, right.
And I was just like, whoa, like, he really is putting a lot of pressure on himself with making sure everything's done right, making sure that everything is ran smoothly. And I think it just really stressed him out.
I wonder if he was like so hyper focused like that because he didn't have control with her murder and everything that happened.
Oh, yeah.
That he's just going forward and hyper focused on all those things and driving himself crazy.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of what it boiled down to. I mean, he was just moving from one fixation to the next. But it was getting worse though. So, this particular job, a new airlines came through to be in the area, and so he needed to look for another job. And so he got actually another job back in Texas. And I was very supportive. I was like, you do what you need to do. I mean, like, he convinced me that this was the way to go, that he needs to move there. Well, I just became so rooted and established, though, in Alabama that I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay. We have a home. We just bought a home. And I was like, and we are financially okay enough for you to like rent an apartment and me just to stay at the home and make sure the kids are going to school and things like that. And I was like, I'll hold down the fort while you go figure out your next career move. Because that's kind of how I was thinking. I was like, okay, this is just, he needs a couple of transitional jobs to get to the next big one. So I let him go. He went to Dallas and worked for a little bit. And then he got a job opportunity in Alaska.
Oh.
And man, he was so excited.
Really?
He was so excited. He was like, I've always dreamed of living in Alaska. And I was like, wow, that's a crazy dream. 'Cause I've never, I've never had
You're
that
like,
dream.
I like traveling, but
I like traveling, but that's cold,
Yeah.
like I'm a beach girl,
Right,
like
right.
I don't know about the Alaska thing, but if this is your dream, I support it because I love you and I support you,
Right.
and I was in my head again, I was like, this is transitional. He'll
Right.
come back around, you know.
Now, is he gone a lot then, obviously,
Yeah.
during this time?
Yeah, he's gone on. I mean, we would visit him about 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
But that's just how we were. Like it felt really secure still.
Right.
But it also was bringing to light, you could just tell that he was emotionally declining or something. Like, and that's the thing, he was running away. He was trying to put distance between us. But I didn't see it like that at the time. I was more convinced, okay, he's just trying to find the next career move.
Right.
But now that I look back on it, I'm like, he was leaving us already.
Oh.
And, so that was hard to come to that acceptance of that he was trying to get away from me and the kids to maybe soften the blow of what maybe he was.
It just detaching totally.
He was detaching. Yeah, he was beginning that detachment process. So anyway, he went to Alaska, helped him move there. I mean, like, got him a little, room to rent type thing. He was happy for a little bit, but man, his mental health really declined in Alaska. And you hear about that all the time. The weather, the sunlight.
Sure. Yeah, right.
I mean, like, just, drinking. It was very culturally accepted to drink a lot more there than normal. And I think he fell back into a lot of drinking coping mechanisms when he was in Alaska.
Okay.
And then compounded with no sunlight, raining every day. I mean, like, I went and visited him a couple of times, and I was like, I'm miserable. Like, like when
Like,
can
how
we
are
leave,
you doing this? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just, so even when I was visiting him, though, I was just like, he's really declining. And I would say things to him like, you need to take some vitamins, or you need to do something, for your body.
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm fine. I'm working. I'm doing this, and so I was just like, you know what? If you think you got it handled, I trust that you have it handled. Do your thing. I'm holding down the fort. That's just like literally what I was doing. I was holding down the fort, and I was there for him if he needed me, but it seemed like he was trying to figure it out, even though I could tell he was emotionally declining. And then it just got to a point where I was like, you're not doing good at all. You need to come back home. I was like, you just need to come back home. No is not going to be an answer. You're coming back home.
And this is probably like the first time you ever like kind of demanded, right?
Yeah. Very first time I demanded something from him, because typically it was just like a trust fall constantly in our relationship. Like, like, you just do your thing. But this time I was like, no, something's really off and you need to come back. So he did. He put in his resignation. He came home.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, let's get on some vitamins. Let's do something. And
was it weird to have him like home?
Yeah.
Because he had been gone.
Well, here's the thing. It was weird because he was different now. He wasn't the same person I had been with for all those years. And I was like really freaked out by it, actually.
How? Like what did...
Just... It was just, like, no one was home. Like, his eyes, he had these really beautiful blue eyes. And when I would look into his eyes after Alaska, it was like that spark was not there. I don't know who was behind those eyes. And it was really scary for me because I was just like, I know this is your body in front of me, but like,
Or
I
like a
don't.
stranger.
Yeah, it was a stranger in front of me.
Yeah.
Because even just how he talked about things, he would get really irritated with things going on in the news or things like that. He would just get really angry very quickly about things that were, completely out of our control. And I'd be like,
Goes back to control again.
Yeah.
He can't control anything.
yeah. And so, he would say something about what was going on TV. And I was like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. That's like in a totally different country.
Right.
Like, who
Right.
cares? Like,
Right.
And he'd be like, no, this is a real problem. And he would get really worked up about some stuff. And I'd be like, gosh, he's exerting so much energy on things that just don't matter.
Right.
Like let's exert our energy on things that are good for our family.
Right.
Like
Like
what's for
right
dinner?
here. Stay right here.
Yeah, like what's for dinner?
Right.
Like are your clothes clean?
Yeah,
I'm trying to be right here and now, and he's out in some other world, having problems and irritations with things that are none of our business.
Right.
So he was just shifting and changing. And then, even with Avery, he was getting really hard on her about things. Like, you should do this with your life. You should do that with your life. And she would call me being like, whoa, Dad's like,
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd be like, I know, girl. Like, I know.
Right.
Like, he's like that with us, too. Like,
Yeah.
It was very dicey for a long time where it was just like, man, if we did anything or said anything, and we didn't know what he would react to. He was just very
So everybody's
irritated.
tiptoeing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
The whole walking on eggshell thing was like real. And I just could never figure out what the heck was going on. I mean, because, at the same time, I'm still trying to hold down the fort.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 kids to raise.
Right.
I got to cook dinner. I got to make sure, everything is in order for us to have just a normal daily life. That I was exerting all of my energy on that.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to become, a caregiver to my husband for a long time. We were equals. For so long we were equals, and then all of a sudden I became his caregiver. And I was like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I signed up for a husband.
Right.
Not a literal third child, because that's what it felt like. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm having to mother him at this point. So it was bad when he moved back from Alaska, and the thing is, it never got better. So he moved back from Alaska in October of 2022.
Okay.
By March, so March is Rachelle's death anniversary.
Okay.
And he was, like, Andrew was doing kind of okay, very irritable, but he was kind of okay until March. And then March hit, he brought up the Moses thing. He brought up how that ruined his life. And I swear this man turned into a tornado.
Really?
I mean, the spiral that started from then on out just became a tornado of destruction, of more paranoid thoughts. He literally never could get his mind calm after that, and then he finally decided to commit suicide in October. So from March to October, he suffered. He suffered in his own mind, in his own body. He couldn't find an outlet. He couldn't find a coping mechanism anywhere.
And he's not talking to you about any of this?
He's talking to me, but he's mad. He's so mad about
he's
life,
angry.
the world. He's, becoming accusing me of things. And I'm trying to be like, look, like, I don't know what world you're in.
Right.
But this is actually a safe environment. Nothing that you're worried about is happening. I mean, I don't know how many times I said that to him. Nothing you're worried about is happening. Everything that you're worried about is not real.
Right.
And he just never heard me. Again, it was like talking to a stranger. It was like talking to someone I didn't even know anymore. And it was just so terrifying.
I'm sure.
Because it was like I was saying this to him, and it just literally went right through him.
And you guys had like such a trusting relationship for so long. I mean, for him to be able to go different places and be in different states, and oh God, it's just.
Yeah. And that's the trauma for me. The trauma for me, yes, it was very traumatic that he died by suicide, but the trauma for me is that love changed. I was like, whoa, Like I didn't know this could happen. So that's the trauma for me. It's like, oh, people don't stay the same. They're
Right.
not forever.
Yeah.
And and the obviously there's trauma too with him committing suicide, because then it's just kind of, he took it upon himself to end his suffering, but then obviously you have survivor's guilt.
Right.
You're like, well, what did I do for him to come to that conclusion?
Right.
Or could I have done something different? I remember thinking that sometimes, me like, oh, if I wouldn't have said that, or if I maybe would have said that different, maybe he wouldn't have taken it that far.
Right.
And I did think that for a little bit, but now that it's been some time, I'm like, no, there's literally nothing that I could have done.
Right.
I actually did everything that I was supposed to do. I was talking to his family members, being like, hey, have you noticed that he's kind of acting strange?
What are they
different?
saying? Like,
Well, they were just kind of like, well, maybe he's just going through something. Because that's what you think.
right.
That's what I was thinking. He's just going through something.
Yeah.
So, they're like, well, maybe try to tell him this, or maybe try to tell him that. Or, even friends. My friends would be like, this looks like something. Maybe do this, maybe try that, maybe leave for a week, just to give him some space. I mean, I tried literally everything. And he never got out of that spiral that started after Rochelle's death date.
Right.
And so it was
So
just
bizarre how he did so well for so long, and then
he did so well for so long, and then it's like something just had to have happened for all of those repressed emotions to come back up. And if you think about it, I mean, it could have just been his age, could have been hormones.
sure.
But it could have been Alaska itself, just with the weather. Maybe it did put him in that threshold of depression too much, to where it was
And then he
like
got
all those.
so in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it could have been a lot of different things, but it was finally the moment where his body and his mind said, I can't hold this down anymore.
Did he tell you ever like that he felt suicidal, or he just doesn't feel like he should be here?
He never flat out said that. In the years past, he would sometimes say, oh, I need a reset button. Sounds very boomer, though. I mean, even my mom is like, man, I wish I had a new body, or something.
Yeah.
It's like, so he would say a lot of times like, oh, I need a reset button, as far as like dealing with Avery, like, because sometimes I think he felt a lot of guilt for not being there at certain times, or, not knowing how to handle the situation when she was younger. So that's what I always thought he was talking about. And I would always just say, hey, you just got to start where you're at, and keep going.
Move forward.
Yeah. But he never flat out told me, I feel like I want to die.
Yeah.
And I think that's the complicated thing about suicide. I don't think a lot of people know they want to die until the day they die.
That moment.
It's that, it's that moment where they're like, I can't handle this pain anymore.
Right.
And I need to take it upon myself to end this. And I really think that's what he did. I think he just got to a point where he was just like, I literally can't live inside of my body. I've got to get out.
Did he act any different, like the days before, like to where you would have seen, like, or it was just erratic behavior?
It was like the same erratic behavior, kind of combative, angry, and so I was just thinking, well, he's just on it again.
Right.
I'll just manage. And that's what was depressing for me during that time too. I was navigating, it felt like I was navigating a small boat through a hurricane. I literally...
That usually doesn't go very well, I'm sure.
And with two kids in the boat,
right,
right, and dogs and cats, I mean, like I'm trying to keep the sailboat afloat while this massive hurricane is trying to drown me.
Right.
And that's what I was doing for months with him. And every time I put my sail up and would start to get some movement, it would just get ripped
hit
down.
Again. Yeah.
And it exhausted me.
Sure.
It just exhausted me to the point where it was just like, man, I have redone this sail so many times. I have fixed this boat so many times to keep going, and you keep smashing into it. And so right before he ended his life, I was kind of getting to the point too where I was just like, I'm exhausted. I don't know how much longer I can do this.
Did you tell him that?
Well, and I told him that in the sense where it was like, maybe I should move back in with my mom or something. Maybe like we need an extended break.
Right.
Because I was just so exhausted trying to hold it all together, for him.
Yeah.
And I was like, so in my head, I was like, maybe this is the moment where it's like, I just need to pick up and move myself. It was like I was, patching this boat for months, surrounded by this hurricane, which was him, just this out of control hurricane. And yeah, the thought came up, maybe I should leave myself. Maybe I should pick up the boat with me and the kids and move it somewhere calmer, somewhere safer, so we could at least rest.
Right.
Because that was another thing that was going on during those months. I prayed every single night for peace. I was like, please, God, bring us peace. I don't care how you do it.
Right.
We need peace. And sometimes you have to trust how that happens, because how it happened was the hurricane stopped. Yeah. Andrew ended his life. And of course, when you're praying for peace, you don't think that that's going to be the outcome. Yeah. But if that's how it was supposed to be, I have to be okay with that. I have to have acceptance for that. And that was kind of the thing when that all happened. So how Andrew did this was interesting, and it parallels Rachelle's story a lot, which is kind of creepy, but shows how connected they were. So Andrew himself went missing. So I had a couple of clients. I worked at this little office down the road from our house, and I had a few clients that morning, and I told him. And he was like, okay. And I came back, and I was doing some things upstairs, and he took a shower. He grabbed a few things, he got dressed, and he said, I'll see you when I see you. And I was like, okay.
Is that a normal thing for him to say?
No. He said, I'll see you when I see you.
Oh.
And I was like, whatever you need to do, buddy. I was, because I was just like, he's going through something. Whatever he needs to do, I'm here
and you
for
need
it.
the award for the most understanding wife on the planet.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I was just, I didn't even ask him where he was going. I was just like, if he needs a break, he needs a break, And I got on a phone call. I was just doing my thing. And I came downstairs after the phone call, and I grabbed some leftover pizza, and I was like, where'd he go? I was like, his truck's outside. My car's here. Where'd he go? So I walked to the basement. He's not down here. I walked outside to the backyard. He's not there. And I'm still eating this pizza. Like, where is he? And so we had cameras all through the house. And so I start looking at the cameras. And I mean, this is a good 30 minutes, 45 minutes after I'm like, where is he, that I decided to check the cameras. And he literally just had a backpack and walked out the front door. And
really?
I was like, yeah. And I saw where he walked. And I was like, he just left. I was like, he just literally walked out the front door with a backpack. Where did he go? So I'm like, okay. And I had to pick up the kids from school. So at first, I had about, 30 minutes before I had to pick up the kids from school. So I jumped in the truck, because I just got those keys first. And I started driving around the neighborhood, just being like, I wonder why he's walking around the neighborhood.
Right.
I mean, did he really just snap? Did he just, his brain,
Yeah.
He just left. And I couldn't find him in the neighborhood. So I was like, okay, I got to get the kids. Be a responsible adult. Be a responsible parent. Go get your children from school. So I go get them. And he's still not back home when because I was kind of thinking that. I was like, maybe he'll be back home by the time I get home from getting the kids.
Right.
And he wasn't there. So I dropped my older son off, and me and my younger daughter, we kept looking for him. And I was driving around.
Did you have a phone?
That's the thing. I kept calling his phone. I kept texting his phone, being like, hey, where'd you go? Why aren't you answering? So I'm driving around for a good hour, and I'm finally just like, okay, I got to take a break. I got to take a second. something's not right, but, let me just go get some food. So I picked up some food for the kids and myself and maybe, Andrew, when, wherever he is.
Right.
Go back home. He's still not there. So I'm just like, okay, like, just chill. Like, don't freak out. Just chill. And, we eat our food. And then I'm like, I'm going to call his phone again. I'm just going to call it again. And this time I was in the living room and I heard his phone. It was ringing from a toolbox. He left his phone. So that's when I was like, oh my God, he left his phone. Because who leaves their phone?
Right, right. And if you do, you go back and get it.
And plus, he was on that phone all the time.
Right.
I mean, he was on YouTube all the time, griping about everybody, I mean, like, that was like his second job, was griping about everybody on YouTube, and he left his phone. And so I was like, whoa, now I know for sure something's not right.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was text his mom. I was like, yeah, I just found his phone. Something's not right. And then I called the police. I was just like, this is not okay. So I called the police and someone comes out. They basically, take all my information. I told them how he had been behaving, and everything, because they asked that, how was his mental health and everything. Right. And I told them. And, and I was just keeping a very positive demeanor. I was like, look, he has been going through a lot lately. I really just think maybe he'll be back tonight. Maybe he just needed a break. I don't know why he left his phone. It is really odd, but, maybe he'll come back. And, even the cops was like, yeah, typically these people come back, type thing. They were even being very positive with me. I don't think they wanted me to panic or fret or anything. And so we go to bed that night. And I'm just like, okay, he'll show up tonight. He'll just show up randomly in the middle of the night.
Girl, I wish I could have your calm. I wish. Can you make sure you leave me some of that?
Give me some of it, Well, I have to be calm.
Yeah.
I have to be this grounded person.
But it's really hard. I mean, I can attest to the fact that it's very hard under crazy circumstances to be that. So well, I applaud you so much because.
Thank you. I mean, I think I'm like this because, if I feel like if I can remain steady and grounded and calm in a situation, then everyone else around me will be steady and calm and be clear-headed to kind of do what I need them to do. Like, I needed to be calm with the police because the police need to be calm also to have a clear mind about what to do next, and even my kids, they don't need to see me panic. They need to be calm also. I don't want to freak them out or anything. Right. So it's like, I know that I ripple effect the emotions in the room. I know that about myself. And so I got to stay calm. That way everyone else stays calm. And so I'm trying to be calm. I'm trying to be really grounded, steady, and hopeful.
Right.
Very hopeful. So he doesn't come back that night. I take the kids to school the next morning. I'm telling the kids, your dad's silly.
Yeah.
He's somewhere.
Right. Right.
Haha.
Yeah.
He'll be back. Don't worry. All that kind of stuff. Take them to school. So when I took them to school that next day, that's when I was like, kind of more in, I got to find him myself. So a couple of weeks before that, he joked a little bit sometimes, maybe I should just be homeless. And I was like, of course you want to be homeless. You're a dude, like what dude doesn't want to try that out every once in a while?
Right.
So I'm just like, but I started thinking about it seriously. I was like, wait, did he actually mean it? So I was like, maybe he meant it. And, he loved hanging out in the woods. We loved these trails in the area. We would walk them periodically together. And, it was just so beautiful. Northern Alabama is just a beautiful area, lots of beautiful trails. So in my head, I was like, he's probably camping out on those trails. Just in my head. Right. I was like, maybe he's on those trails. So I put on my tennis shoes. I grab a backpack. I put some Nutri-Grain bars in it, some water, because I'm on a hunt. Right. I'm hunting for my husband. I gotta find him.
Right.
And I'm not telling anybody what's going on. I don't want people to be like, well, did Andrew lose it?
And judge him.
Yeah, and judge him. I didn't want that. I kept this very private. No one knew what was going on, but like maybe 3 or 4 people. Because I did not want to find him and then being like, oh, why'd you freak out and do that? You really scared Sarah. Like, I did not want anyone judging him because I already knew what he went through.
Right.
I was very, cognizant of the fact that he had already gone through trauma. He had already gone through that kind of life, and I was not about to make that worse, So I kept this very private. No one knew what was going on. And so I'm looking for him. And I'm screaming his name, and and I'm walking these trails, and I'm trying to think in my head, where could he be? And I was out there all day. I mean, for 6 hours, just walking around.
That was his work, like looking for him, or?
So he was working a schedule where it was like 4 days on, 4 days off.
Okay.
And it was during the 4 days off.
Ah.
So the work.
So they're not like wondering where he's at yet or anything
but
like that.
I definitely did reach out to a couple of his workmates, being like, have you heard of him? And they were like, no. And then even his boss was like, well, I mean, it's technically his days off,
Right.
So, but he was like, well, let's check back in when he's supposed to work, So until that time, I took it upon myself to try to find him, just me. And that's when I realized, after that day of searching for him myself, that's when I was like, I need help. I can't do this. I can't parent. I can't be sane right now looking for this guy by myself.
Right.
So that's when it just came to the conclusion that I should probably hire a private investigator. And I was connected to a few people who knew someone who was already doing that work. And, sometimes private investigators take it upon themselves to accept a case or not.
Right.
And so I had a couple of people who knew this guy be like, hey, like, this is what's been going on. She needs help, like, right now.
Yeah.
And so he came out to the house. He took a couple of questions. I gave him some of his belongings, like things that he would wear. We watched the cameras. That way he would know, what he looked like, how he walked, things like that. And I was just like, I'm basically putting all my eggs in this basket that you're going to find him. And he was like, I'm going to find him. And we even talked. I was like, even with him, the hope was we're going to find him alive. He's probably just out drunk, walking around, wanting to be homeless.
Right.
He probably found a shopping cart that he really liked. I mean, like we're trying to be positive.
Right.
Like we're like, he already found a tent. I mean, we are trying to remain the most positive. But I even said, I go, well, what if he fell down and broke his foot and he's stuck? And he's like, well, then we'll get him medical care, like that kind of thing. I never once thought he was going off to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Never crossed my mind. I just always was just like, he's under a bridge somewhere. Mm-hmm. So he's out looking for him now, and I can kind of just take a break now. Now I can just be like, okay,
so where are we time-wise now? So
this is like day 3 or 4 into this.
The PI is starting.
Yeah.
Now, are the police looking too?
The police are looking too. I mean, the police did say, on that first day that I called, that they were going to, look in areas that they thought he might be at, which were like, homeless camps and stuff. And I even myself went to a place where a lot of homeless people went, because my friend told me, you really need to make missing persons flyers.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, like this is getting real.
Right.
This is actually happening. So I made a few flyers, and I mean, she's the one who took them into gas stations and things like that, because I couldn't even do it. I couldn't even walk in somewhere being like, hey, my husband's missing. Can you put this on the front door? Like, I mean, what?
Yeah.
Like, that was just like I couldn't even express that.
Way
I couldn't
too
even
real.
speak that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she did all that for me. But yeah, I mean, it was like, around the 4th or 5th day. It's real blurry when I think about it. But so I was kind of taking a break from looking for him. I was just trusting that things would happen. And that's when I saw the private investigator and my friend drive up. And that's when I knew. I was like, they found him. And then the private investigator got out of his car and just had this real sullen look on his face. And I was like, he's dead. I just knew it. And then after that, to be honest, I kind of browned out. I didn't black out. I browned out. I could kind of see what was going on in my peripherals. I could kind of see, I could kind of hear some things. I heard him tell me we found him dead. He had strangled him. He had hung himself. I heard those things, but like, it was not, like, I was not in my body.
Right.
Sarah was gone.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of probably how he felt when he found out about Rachelle. It reminded me of that, about that kind of trauma that he probably experienced when all that happened.
Yeah, because it's so surreal.
Yeah. And I mean, my friend said, Sarah, I don't know if you remember this, but you literally started wailing. And I was like, I don't even remember. She was like, you literally went straight to the ground and started wailing. She's like, it reminded me of like those movies that you watch about army, they tell an army wife that their
Right.
husbands have passed away. She was like, it was literally something out of a movie.
Yeah.
I was like, well, thank God I don't really remember it.
I will tell you that's normal.
Yeah.
Because I did the same thing in the hospital, like when I knew that there was no chance.
Yeah.
Like for my first husband to make it because he was brain dead.
Yeah.
But everything you're describing, I felt the same. Just like
Yeah.
that. Everything
and I
feels
think it's
like
beautiful. I think it's like a beautiful way for your body to be like, I'll take it from here.
And I didn't remember that for a long time though. That was people telling me, but
Yeah.
it's been 24 years
Right.
for me. But hopefully it doesn't come back to you because it's not.
I don't really
It's
want to know.
yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
wonderful thing.
And I mean, again, I had glimpses. of, okay, this is what's happening. This is real. Things like that. But yeah, like my body just kind of halfway shut down. And again,
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing that our bodies do for us.
Sure.
It helps us not break.
Right.
Because to handle all of that
That.
stress all at once, it probably would have broke me completely,
For
and
sure.
fragmented my soul. And I think it keeps you from that.
It does.
So I was very thankful that my body went into survival mode and helped me get through that. But then I had to get real with myself. I had to then be like, okay, the coroner is on the phone now, asking me what to do with him.
So where is he? Where do they find him?
He was about 2 miles away from our house. He walked.
Okay.
And he hung himself in the woods, just randomly in this little patch of woods right off a main road there. I mean, nothing special. He just was walking through and found
And
a tree.
they're sure it wasn't foul play. Did he leave a note?
Oh,
Anything?
yeah. He left several notes. It was a very by the book
Calculated.
suicide. Notes for everybody.
Oh.
I mean, he was so close to a lot of businesses on the road that even the private investigator was like, yeah, we used this camera from this building to watch him literally just walk into the woods and do it. I mean, like, there was no question about it.
Wow.
I know. And even the private investigator was like, he had plenty of time to walk and think about what he was doing. Mm-hmm. So this was a choice.
He wasn't like intoxicated or anything?
He was, but even the private investigator was like, I don't know if he was that intoxicated. 'Cause, I mean, like, this is midday also.
Right.
So, but he made a decision. It was very much so a decision. No foul play, nothing like that. And so,
Did his note bring you any peace? Did it make it worse? Both?
so that one stung me because, like I said, during that time, he was very irritated. He was very angry at the world.
Yeah.
And some of his notes to some of the people were good and calm, but the notes to kind of me and the kids were a little bit irritated, a little bit agitated towards us. And again, I think it's just
Well, you're
because
closest. You're closest to him.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I was caregiving him, and I was kind of became his mom. And so, of course, who are we most mad at? Our moms when we
Right.
get upset.
Right.
So it's kind of like, in his note, yes, he put sentiments that I love you, things like that. But then there was also this irritation there. And I was like, ugh. And then plus, again, he was very paranoid during that time. Mm-hmm. And so the paranoia, I think, took over his note. I was the last note that he wrote. And, man, his writing became very slurred.
Oh.
Compared to the other notes.
Right.
So by the time he got to me, it was a very agitated, slurred type of writing. Just something in him took over. Again, I knew that whoever wrote that note wasn't my husband.
Right.
It was something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got the notes back, I cut out the part that said, I love you, and I burned it. So I was just like,
You gotta do what you have to do,
I was like,
you know?
this is not my story.
Yes, yes. You're like, that's not love.
I was like, well, in my eyes, I was like, that wasn't even my husband.
Right,
Like, this was some weird creature inside of him.
right,
You know, like that, I'm just going to burn it.
right.
So, and it was kind of the same with the kids too. I did cut out some parts, you know, because he was very paranoid about our kids having friends or being associated with certain people, or, you know, like, it was weird. It was the paranoia was so high. I was like, okay, I'm not going to totally burn their notes, but I am going to cut out the pieces that literally don't make sense.
Right.
That are just like mental illness.
More for them to try to process and understand. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I kept those little parts, and, you know, maybe I'll show those to the kids later, but it just wasn't him. This wasn't him. That's not how I was going to honor him.
Right.
You know, and that's what it came down to too. It was like, okay, you know, so when the private investigator told us, I kind of browned out, didn't know, but that's when I had to start shifting gears. That's when I had to get into the mode of, okay, now I got to tell the coroner what funeral home to take him to. Like, how do you
do all that?
I remember he asked me that, and I was like, I don't even know what is even around here. And the private investigator just kind of took my phone and was like, just take him here, you know? Like,
yeah.
I was like, thank you.
Well, that was good. That was awesome that
I
he
was
did
just
that.
like, because I was like, I don't know where you should take him.
Right.
And then that's when I was like, oh, crap, I got to start telling people.
Yeah.
Like that I found out, you know? So that's when I called, Avery was with one of Rachelle's family members, and I called him, and I told him, and I was like, you need to tell her. I can't tell her. I can't tell her now that both of her parents are dead.
Right.
I mean, like, no, I can't. So I told him, and he told her, and she was visiting him in Chicago at the time, so it was kind of it was a good thing that she was there. And then I had the private investigator call Andrew's mom, because I was not going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could hear her screaming on the phone. You know, like I was not going to do that. And then that's when I was like, okay, I got to tell the kids. Mm-hmm. So I had to really regroup. I had to get it together, you know, that hold down the fort, get it together,
right.
You know, walked myself in the house. The private investigator took me to my son first. We went outside. I told Aiden, you know, and just shock on his face.
They're how old?
So at the time, Aiden was 13, and my daughter Skylar was 7. Yeah, and so I told Aiden, he just, you know, you could kind of tell he browned out too a little bit because you know we just experienced a week of me saying, "Oh, Dad's missing. We'll find him," you know, and I'm sure they were hopeful too. And then I just had to tell him that his dad died. I mean, like,
did they want to know how?
So not at the moment, but later on, they did want to know. But with Aiden, when I first told him, you know, he was kind of shocked, and the private investigator was like, it's okay if you cry. And I thought that was really good for him to say to him, especially as a young boy.
Right.
Because it's okay to experience those emotions and things like that. And I just told Aiden, I was like, look, we're going to get through this. We're going to make sure that Skylar remembers Dad the way that we remembered him, because, you know, Aiden had the best years of Dad. Aiden had those really good years of him. So my son knew Andrew's heart the most, knew that playful dad, that doting dad, the silly dad, the mechanic dad. I mean, like that's what my son knew the most. And so I gave Aiden a job. I was like, look, we're going to make sure that Dad is remembered like this. And he was like, okay, I can do that. So there was a lot of resolve right then and there.
Right.
But then I had to tell Skylar. And Skylar, so she's a little girl. And, you know, a lot of the girls that she was going to school with come from separated parents and things like that. And I remember like a month before this, she was just now learning about like stepmoms and stepdads and who they were and stuff like that. And so I told her, I go, you know, Daddy's in heaven now. We found him and he's in heaven. And she goes, does this mean I get a stepdad?
You're right.
I was just like, oh my God. I was like, maybe. Like, I'm not thinking
we'll talk about that later.
But, you know, that's how her little brain computed it. Like, okay, if Dad's in heaven, do I get another dad? That's immediately what she thought. Immediately she was like, well, where's my next dad? Or like, how do I have a dad again?
Right.
And it's sad. It's sad to think about that that's where her brain first went.
Mm-hmm.
But then, it didn't quite hit her. I could tell it didn't hit her.
Right.
She was just like, okay, well, Dad's in heaven.
Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, what does
Yeah,
that mean?
yeah.
So then after that, we got a hold of Avery finally. And, this is when everyone's starting to get called. This is when my friends are like calling my mom, my sister, and they're driving. I mean, it's a 9-hour drive from Texas to Alabama. And
They're all coming to you.
Yeah, they immediately pack up, start driving towards me. Because, we all didn't know what to do while he was missing.
Right.
And so, but when they found out, man, they were on the car on the way. And then Avery, even too, her family member booked her a flight immediately to come to Alabama.
Oh.
And so everyone got together.
Because she's close with you.
Yeah, we're really close. And so everyone got together. And once we got together, I was like, okay, I got to go to the funeral home now and figure this out, Mm-hmm. And that's when all the gory details kind of came up, about like how he was sitting there for so long, and how we couldn't see his body, how we couldn't do fingerprint stuff, how that was just out of the question.
Oh.
Yeah.
So did he do it like right away, like that first day?
He did it that very first day. And it just took that amount of time to find him.
How did that investigator know to
I remember one of the questions I asked him when I hired him, I was like, can you tap into highway cameras? And he goes, yes, I have the authority to do that, basically.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure to know that because, remember, in my head, I was like, he must be homeless. He's
right.
hitchhiking. He's in Atlanta,
right. Right.
So I need to have someone who can tap into those cameras to see what truck he got into or, whatever.
Right.
Well, he just simply went 2 miles down the road. But he did use cameras, of businesses and the highway and stuff and intersections to find out.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So it was pretty quick once he got on, where his location was.
So then you guys are at the funeral home and they're telling you can't see him or anything?
Yeah, the funeral home, he was just like, absolutely not. You can't see his body. We're not going to even let you think that. And that's when I was just like, whoa, okay. So that was scary. That was scary because I was just like, okay, this is really a situation where I'm probably not going to have a lot of closure, And, of course, his mom also and her family are headed here to Alabama, too. Right. And so I set up the funeral for the next day. She, his mother desperately wanted some sort of a viewing. And I was like trying to tell her, like, they're not going to allow us to have a viewing. But he did say that he could let the body be in a certain room for a certain amount of time before they cremated him. And, so she was like, well, I just want to be in the room with his body, and it can be covered and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, okay, I can do that because we have this special equipment to where he's contained and, things like that. So in my head, I was like, well, okay, well, that'll be her thing. I'm fine. I don't need to see anything. We're just going to have a little service. Like, she wanted some songs played. And I was like, whatever songs you need. I mean, she just lost her baby.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this woman feels like that she's okay.
Right.
Because that's just who I am. Even the cremation stuff, I was like, look, you're getting half. I'm getting half. Like, that's your kid.
Right.
I never once was like, oh, no, this is mine. This is all mine. Like, no. Like, this is a terrible situation that we all need closure from. And so, but yeah, so they had his body in this room, and I didn't know it was going to be just in this room when we came to the funeral home. And I walked into the room and saw the, bed with the sheet over it. And, oh, man, I was like, holy crap.
It, like, hit you hard.
It hit me. I was like, this is real now. This is real now. I mean, it, like, literally sucked the air out of me. And I had to sit there for a second. And I was crying. And I was just like, okay, this is real now. But I didn't realize how good that was for me. Because, after she got her time to sit with him, then I sat with him and I, put my hand on him and I let the kids put their hand, on him. We all got a moment of closure.
Did they understand why they couldn't see him?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just knew that he was there. There was a sheet over him.
That was enough. Yeah.
That was enough. Yeah. And we did have a little special service for him. The songs were played. the preacher that spoke, I told him, what happened, and he made it was a very good speech, that he did kind of on a whim.
Right.
It gave us a lot of closure. And so, but yeah, and then it was done. And then, he goes and gets cremated. And what a weird feeling.
Right. And then you're like, now what?
Yeah. Now what? So, now the whole town's finding out. And that's the thing too. So Rachelle's situation and his situation in the form of death was very, like I said, parallels, like they were both missing for a certain amount of time and all that kind of stuff. And I was very open about what happened to Andrew. I know a lot of women, if their husbands commit suicide, sometimes they don't tell the whole truth because there's such a stigma with it.
Right.
Like, because immediately they're going to feel like they're being accused of something. Like, oh, well, you must have driven him to this situation for him to do this,
And that's so sad.
It is sad. Yeah. And but it's the truth. It's just what happens. But I was just like, nope. I am not going to sit here and be like, oh, Andrew just died of natural causes. Like, nope, he died of suicide, and this is why. And I think just that pure kind of frequency of like truth and being grounded and steady about it made the whole community be like, all right, well, let's give her everything that we got as a community. Let's support her. And I got so much support. I was getting Venmos left and right. Someone started me a GoFundMe. Like everyone was messaging me being like, you were so brave for telling the truth and being honest about the situation and how you're handling it. And I was like, how else am I supposed to do this?
It's a lot harder for people to talk shit about the truth.
Oh, dang, girl.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just out there with it. I was like, this is what happened. He was struggling. This is his history. Because, that's another thing. Andrew was so private that when we moved to Alabama, it's not like I was telling everybody about his first wife.
Right.
It's not like I was like, oh, yeah, Andrew's first wife was murdered.
Right,
And
right.
He's got a daughter.
He's been struggling. And
he's been struggling.
Yeah.
It's not like I said anything. They just all thought, oh, he's just a normal person who's got, who just moved here. And so I was very private. So when they all started finding out what was going on, they were like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. And Sarah needs our support.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And the kids got so much support too from the schools and, a grief center that they started going to. And even, so this is a little bit of a plug, but it's so important for people who have gone through this. So there's this organization called Project Unbroken.
Unbroken?
Unbroken? ProjectUnbroken.org. And it's a lady that, it's so interesting because, after something like this happens to you, some of us are like, what can I do to make this better? Like, how can I help? And even myself, I was like, maybe I can, create a plan. Maybe I can create something for kids or, something to help kids of suicide go through this, or, you want to help,
Right.
I was even thinking in my head, I was like, maybe I can start a summer camp for kids who have gone through this.
Right.
You just think of everything. Well, I stumbled upon her on Instagram, and she had literally just started Project Unbroken, which is a nonprofit that raises money for kids to do extracurricular activities, kids of suicide. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm into this. I support this. This will give me an outlet. This will help me channel my grief.
Right.
And so I started telling everybody about it. I was like, you need to donate to this. You need to donate to that. I talked to the creator, Trina, on the phone. Same experience. Her husband committed suicide, and she needed a way to channel her grief. And that's how she did it. And so, the community just surrounded the kids. And then I found this nonprofit, and they surrounded the kids. My son's about to go on a band trip, all funded by, this organization. My daughter, she got yoga right afterwards to help kind of heal her body with the organization. She's doing singing lessons right now because of the organization, because those things are so important to help your body release any kind of emotions that are trapped, and to
focus on positive and
focus on what you can build on now. The storm is over, let's rebuild.
Right.
The hurricane's over.
Right.
So now it's cleanup time, you know? And so these people who stepped into my life after this are all part of the cleanup crew. And I'm just literally extremely thankful for every single person who has entered my life after this, because I know without a doubt that they're part of my rebuilding now. And
Because
I
it's
have,
only been a year and a half, too.
yeah, it's
Like,
only been a year and a
that's
half.
not long.
It's not. And I trust so much the things that have happened since his death that I feel like I'm able to rebuild faster, because I'm like, yes, that feels right. Yes, that feels right. You're new. Okay. You're doing something, you know?
Right.
So I'm just trusting the whole process that, that this doesn't have to be a total tragedy. This can be something that this can be an opportunity for me to relearn who I am and rebuild again in a way that maybe I needed to, that is healthier for me now than what it was, 20 years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, you were living for him,
I
pretty
know.
much.
I was living for him, and
Go do what you need to do. Go for you, for you. I'll do this. I'll take care of this,
yeah,
which is your whole life you were taking care of while he did
I know.
his thing.
And now I kind of get to do it the way I want to do it. And it's not that I'm being wild and crazy and free, or or anything. Like, I still have responsibilities. I still have children that I'm raising. I'm still a responsible adult and
You're still
parent.
grieving all the things,
I'm still grieving, but at the same time, I just get to pick and choose. I get to pick and choose my light, and I also get to pick and choose my darkness. I have both dark and light in me, and I get to pick and choose now that balance, that day-to-day balance that I need to have with both of those aspects of myself. And I think a lot of people look to me now as like, someone who's like, oh my gosh, like she really has it together. But how much work it took to get here can't go, like, it's not like I snapped my fingers and I was like this.
Right.
I mean, there was days I couldn't
work.
get out of bed.
Sure.
There was days where I was like, man, am I suicidal? Like, what's going on here?
Right.
And so I really had to dig my heels in and be like, I can do this. I can rebuild from this and get out of this okay.
So good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And your kids are seeing that too.
Yes. And, I think that's another thing about grief. A lot of parents, I think, hide their grief from their children, thinking that it's protecting them. And I let my kids see everything.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I'll put on my headphones and I'll listen to purposely really sad music, and I'll do the dishes or something. I'll just be crying doing the dishes.
Just get it out.
Yeah. And my son will be like, oh my gosh, Mom. And I'm like, I'm just having a bad day.
It's part of my healing process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of my healing. He's like, but he sees that. So for him to see me grieve makes it okay for him to grieve.
That it's real.
It's okay to do it.
It doesn't have to be perfect. And all the things.
Yeah. And like, right after I cry, heck, let's go see a movie,
Right.
Let's do something else.
Right.
And so I think it's good for me, or it's good for the kids and even for me, to grieve out loud, because I don't want there to be a stigma around it.
Right.
I don't want there to be a stigma that, oh, you just got to push it down and hold it together. It's like, no, like there's got to be some moments where my kids are like, okay, it's okay to grieve because Mom grieved.
Yes.
So hopefully this whole experience has made them wiser also, that emotions are real, they're okay, and that you can work through them. You can cry and then literally laugh right afterwards.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All the time. I still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's, grief isn't linear either. I mean, there's some days where that week that he was missing feels like it was right now.
Right.
And that grief all wells back up in me, and I re-cry about it.
Right.
And that's another thing that's been going on too. So speaking of Rachelle's murder, his execution has now been set. The date is very soon.
It's the 23rd, right?
It's the 23rd.
That's my birthday.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I know. I know.
my gosh.
I remember kind of saying that. I'm like, oh my God, that's my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's another thing. So Andrew had already been passed away for a year, and that's when Avery got the phone call about the death penalty.
The date. Okay.
And she called me, and I immediately started crying. Because for one, I was like, oh my God, like, yes, thank God this chapter can close.
Right.
I was like, this chapter needs to close. And then I'm also crying because I'm like, why isn't Andrew here for this? Why am I doing this?
Right.
You know, this was his situation. Why am I going to be the one that has to hold this
Right.
now? So it was a very strange way to get the news because I wasn't sure whether to be happy or sad, or I didn't know what to feel. I just immediately started crying because I was just like
Right.
relieved in one sense, but then sad that he's not here.
Probably a little angry too. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's okay too.
I mean, I was just feeling it all. And so then that's when all that adventure started, you know. Yeah, so they set the dates, and that's been bringing up a lot of repressed emotions in me because, you know, I was part of that court case. And so, you know, now I'm thinking about all those things, and I'm kind of, you know, anxious about things
yeah.
again. And you know what's weird? You know, Andrew and I were together for so long. We obviously picked up on each other's energies all the time. And I think it's weird to say this, but I feel like a part of me, it's almost like something within me is him, and he is re-grieving also. Because there's some times where I will just get upset and re-grieve the whole death penalty, the murder, everything. I'll just be grieving, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is like not mine.
Right.
And I feel like it's Andrew's grief coming through me.
Well, and you have so many emotions related to that too, and then your daughter or his daughter. I'm
Yeah.
sure you consider her your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Just the emotions behind all of that.
Yeah, because, you know,
And then
yeah.
his death too. Like, girl, you probably have 5,000 different things going through your head right now.
Yeah.
And it's totally understandable.
I do. And, you know, and my memory's terrible now because I do have so much going through my head. I have, you know, I have grief, I have planning, I have all this stuff going on. I mean, my brain is just maxed out at this point.
Right.
And so, but yeah, like when the death penalty was announced, I felt like it was almost like Andrew's energy was grieving through me, through my body. So, you know, I have to allot time and space and energy for that. I feel like I'm doing kind of a service for Andrew in that sense where it's like, okay, I will grieve for you, you know? And then, yeah, with Avery too, she's grieving. This is all bringing up something within her also.
Right.
And so I'm grieving with her also, but then at the same time, I'm trying to also shield her from anything, you know, because I do feel like that's Andrew's energy also, just trying to
Right.
protect her and shield her from any kind of misinformation or anything like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, the past couple of months have just been exhausting in that sense because I feel like I'm doing a lot of different roles all at once in preparation for this.
Right.
And so, yeah, hopefully when this execution does happen, I will be clean slate.
You'll be able to breathe for a second. Yeah.
This 20-year cycle will be over. I will reclaim myself. I will get to do more things that are for me and not for everyone else.
Right.
I will still be a responsible parent and all those things, but I mean, it's going to be crazy to see who I become
Right.
after this. So
I
I'm
mean,
excited.
You're already doing it, girl. It's crazy.
I'm trying. And, you know, again, like my mindset, I don't know what blessed me with this mindset.
I don't know either, but like I said, leave me some because I only wish.
I mean, well, and it's those widows group. I see so many women in those widows groups just fall apart. And they don't know. It's like they can't get their footing.
Right.
You know, with
Right.
it. And I read their stories, and there is a lot of anger and bitterness and not being able to move on. And again, you know.
And they're carrying all that.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and for me, even with Andrew's note, it's like, well, that's not my story. I'm
Right.
not doing that.
Right.
I'm going to have a beautiful life after this.
Right.
I'm young, you know. I need to be a good example. I need to for my kids, you
Right.
know, for myself.
Do they know that that's how he died now?
So yes, so right after he died, you know, we went through the whole process of the funeral and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Well, it was about a week or two later that my son first was like, "How did he die?" And it was a pause. I had to pause for a minute because I was just like,
Wow,
is
he waited that long to ask.
yeah, because and I even was just like, is he ready to know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I was like, you know what? He's ready. I just felt like he was ready to know. And I was like, you know, your dad committed suicide. And he
Mm-hmm.
was just like, just let out this big sigh. And I was like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah. And Aiden, it was just kind of, he didn't say it out loud. It was more so just like this energy, like, I kind of figured, you know, it was just kind of, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of thought that.
Well, and he saw the behavior was different too.
Right. I mean, yeah, he was in the storm too. He saw the
Yeah.
hurricane. And so, you know, he wasn't exactly surprised with
Right.
it.
Little one doesn't know yet.
She actually does know
She
because
does.
she wanted to know too. And I was had to be really delicate with that. I was like, okay, I need like counselors, I need like people to
Yeah.
navigate me.
Right. Right.
Like, well, how do I do this? You know?
Yeah.
And how I explained it to her and how a lot of other people also told me to explain it to her was that, you know, he was just having a hard time and he needed to leave. He was just having a hard time being a human.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wanted to go be with God. So it made it to where it was like it was still his decision. It wasn't like outright saying, you know, he committed suicide, but
Right.
it was like it was still like saying to her he made the decision to go be with God.
Mm-hmm.
And she took that well. She was just like, well, yeah, I get it. It's hard being a human, you know?
Oh.
And I,
See, I wish I would have had guidance like that because with my youngest, my Kenna, she I didn't tell her for like the longest time.
Yeah.
It was always that it was an accident. Just an accident. Didn't say like exactly what happened. And she ended up finding out and she was like really, really mad at me. She heard me talking to someone.
yeah.
But I think she was like, actually I can just ask you how old were you? 12. She was 12.
Yeah.
But she was mad at me. So it's like you don't know what to do. You don't
Yeah.
know, and then
Well, and it boils back to I just wanted to be transparent and honest.
and honest, yeah.
You know, even with how he died to the public, to the community,
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like honesty was the best policy, you know, with this one. And it was the same with the kids, but I understand trying to protect them.
Yeah,
You know, like
right.
you want to make sure they're ready. Like if I didn't feel like she was ready to know that, I would have waited.
Right,
But it's like I could just see it in her face that she really needed to know
right.
in order for her to heal. And
It's
move
good that you
on.
did because, like I said, with Kenna, she was
Yeah.
not happy.
Yeah. So both of them know. And, you know, of course, Avery, I told her immediately what happened. And she even was same sentiment as Aiden, just like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I'm glad that they're not, thinking, oh, well, he left us. He didn't care or,
Yeah.
things like that.
You know, and I don't even feel like that either. It's when people
His
even ask
struggle.
me, when people even ask me, like, are you mad at him? I'm like, if you would have seen how much he was struggling, you would know not to be mad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was just suffering. And there was just nothing you could do.
Right.
And so, again, it goes back to I was praying for peace the whole time. And I can't debate with God how that happens.
Right.
You know, that's just how the prayer was answered. And that sounds so strange and weird. That goes against all the terms of prevent suicide and la la la.
Right.
But when you have this gut feeling that this is just what happens, you know, like there was nothing I could have done to prevent it.
Right.
Again, it's just that honesty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's just get real about it.
Right.
You know, how are you supposed to prevent suicide when they really feel like that's what they should do?
Right.
And so, you know, it really makes it hard to be like, okay, what do we advocate for here?
Yeah, and he obviously had it planned out. It wasn't just an impulsive
No.
thing. Like, a lot of them are
Right.
impulsive. They're drinking drugs, something.
Yeah.
And then it's like that impulse or that moment that they think it's just over. It needs to be over.
Yeah.
He wrote letters. He
Took his time. He took his time with it. And so I think, yeah, like how do you prevent suicide? Well, it started way before the day it happened,
Right.
Like it all boils down to a choice of getting help.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why Andrew didn't seek help the way he may have needed.
Mm-hmm.
it still boils down to a choice. Now, I've talked to several men about maybe why men's mental health is so, so much different than women. Women are a lot more likely to get therapy than men.
Right.
With men, there's this stigma that you have to keep it together.
Right.
Hold
It's a
it
weakness.
together. Yeah. Being
Yeah.
vulnerable and showing your emotions is a weakness. And, that could have been something that maybe was a lot heavier for him than I thought. Because in my eyes, he was a very emotioned person. Like, he would talk about his feelings a lot.
Right.
And he would tell me things. But maybe he got to a point where he felt like he couldn't anymore.
Right.
Maybe when he, distanced himself and things like that. And that's the thing. He was doing so well for so long, and then it all crept back up on him.
Right.
Who knows when that happens?
Right.
You can't time these
Right.
things. And so suicide is just such a complex situation.
It is.
And, again, men are way more likely to commit suicide than women. And so it's like, how do we prevent suicide? Well, maybe we just make it culturally accepted that men don't need to feel weak or feel like that anything's going to be taken away from them if they decide to be vulnerable with
Right.
what's going on in their life.
Right.
And
That's why I'm so thankful on here, like on the podcast too, the amount of men we've had telling their stories.
Yeah.
Because people need to be able to relate and
Yeah.
know that they're not just like this oddball out, thinking the way they think or feeling the way they feel, and they can get help.
Yeah. Yeah, and they absolutely, I talked to a man about this because, I wanted to get a man's perspective.
Sure.
And he even said, he goes, I had to go to other men to receive the help that I needed. I couldn't exactly go to a woman because they can't relate.
Right.
And so men need men in order to get through this. And, Andrew had isolated himself so much from everybody. I mean, even his workmates didn't know what was going on.
Really?
That's the thing. I mean, he really reclused back. He pulled himself away from everyone, from me, from his workmates, other men in his life. And, but again, that was his choice.
Right.
And I think, men, though, need to have groups of men that they can go to that are open to
Right.
discussing their emotions and their feelings, because only another man's going to get what's going on with them. Because their brains are wired different. They're going to view the world differently with their responsibilities and things like that.
Right.
So, yeah, I just think how to maybe stop suicide in its tracks is just making it more acceptable that men need men.
Right. Right.
Because we're always, we're always talking about how women need women.
Right.
Like, well,
Right.
men need them, other men also. And so.
And women, I think we will vent like to our girlfriends a lot easier, and like if we're feeling a certain way or what we think about something, where men are just kind of like, oh,
yeah,
whatever, like life's
Yeah.
good, life's not so good. Like they don't go into detail.
They don't, because there's this stigma that if anything is going wrong or off,
Yes.
then there's something wrong with them.
Right.
So, but that's going to just take years. It's going to take years of cultural retraining.
Yeah, I think it's gotten a little better, but we have a lot of work to do for that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's good that you're having more men on here.
Yeah.
I mean, all we can really do is set the example
Right.
of how we would like it to be.
Right.
But it's going to take a long time in order for us to see results. But
sure.
hopefully more and more men do feel like they can get help rather than just pushing it all down.
Right.
And, doing that. But, Andrew, again, it was such a complex situation. I mean, what 20-year-old boy could have navigated what happened to him
Right.
at that time in a
Right.
healthy way? And I think he did everything he could to try to have a normal life, but it just all caught back up to him.
Yeah. He couldn't keep it down.
Yeah. And even with someone like me being around him, being expressive and me seeing him for who he was, it still just wasn't enough.
Right.
But again, it's a choice. He decided to walk off. And, I hope other men decide to get in their cars and go to a counseling center.
Right.
You know,
Right.
go get some help.
Reach out
Yeah.
somehow.
And
Yeah.
and when I, even when I say go get some help, that even saying that sometimes has a negative connotation to it. Like, well, you need to go get some help.
Right.
Even that kind of attitude needs to change where it's like, yeah, please go get some help. I
Right.
want you to stay alive.
Yes.
And so the sentiment even around everything just has to change.
Well, and I think even with suicide though too, I think so many people are always just like, oh, it's so selfish. It's so this. They didn't think about their kids. They didn't think about their wife. But when you're in that moment
Yeah.
and you're in that headspace, I don't think they really think about anything.
They don't. I
They just
remember-
don't want to be in pain any longer.
Yeah, I remember when I announced it, I did get a comment that, like, oh, that was selfish. And I was just thinking, gosh, you have no idea.
You have no idea.
You
Right.
have no idea how actually selfless that was.
Right.
He actually thought about me and the kids.
Yeah.
He wrote us notes, even though they were kind of weird, like
Right.
he did think about us.
But that shows his headspace too at that point, if he was all erratic about it and just different.
But I really do think it was, I have to be so careful about what I say, but it's like, it kind of was a selfless act. I mean, like in his mind, it was like, I'm
For him.
choosing not to get better. I'm choosing that I don't want to go down the counseling route, or that I don't want to figure out these emotions. And
Right.
so, maybe it's best that I do this.
And that was his choice.
And it was his
Yeah.
choice. And it's like, okay, well, I have to respect that then.
Right.
And that's what I tell the kids too. I mean, even though he is my late husband, I still respect him.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that maybe makes me a little bit different too in that sense, because a lot of these wives in the widows groups, they're really angry. They're like, how could he have done this to
Yeah.
me? I read that all the time.
Right.
He left me. How could he have done this to me? And I'm still in the mindset of, well, he did what he did. I respect his decision.
Right.
I have to keep pushing forward.
Right.
And I don't have any anger towards him.
Right.
I'm just kind of like, well, that's the decision that he made, and I'll just keep trucking forward.
Keep going.
Keep going. But yeah, it's hard. I see the women suffering in those groups, and I wish I could just be like, don't think that way. But you can't tell someone to not
Right,
think that way.
right.
They have to go through their
Their own journey. Yeah.
their own little thing.
Yep.
But I just hope that someone hears this and is like, okay, I can get through this. Like, if she can get through it, I can get through it.
So, in closing out, what would you want to tell someone or tell the masses, like when it comes to being a widow and facing, your husband committing suicide? Like, there's so many widows out there.
Yeah, I would say to other widows, be easy on yourself. Just be real gentle with yourself. Like, take the breaks, sleep, eat the foods.
Right.
Don't beat yourself up too much. There really was nothing you could have done.
Right.
Try to figure out your new identity.
That's a big one.
Like, right off the bat, try to figure out who you want to be. View this as an opportunity to be just a brand new person. It's, try to view it as a graduation. Try to view it as an initiation into a new life. And so if you need to change your hair color, do it. If you need to buy a new wardrobe, do it.
Right.
But try to view it more so as an initiation into a whole new world, and not as like something that happened to you. I think that's what I would say.
No, I think that's awesome, because so many people, finding your new normal is really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. So
Yeah. So
I
make
think
it an adventure. Make it an adventure. Make it exciting. Be like, oh wow, I'm on a brand new journey, and
right.
what do I do now?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
And that's how I would try to express it to other widows. And yes, it's something horrible that happened to you, but it's also in the past.
Right.
It's funny. I had a lady tell me years ago. She goes, you can't drive if you're constantly looking in the rearview mirror. And so
That's true.
And she said that to me a long time ago. I was like 19, 20 years old, and that's always stuck with me, in the sense of, she's right. You can't drive forward if you're constantly looking in the rearview mirror. So yeah, you have to keep your eyes on the road and not what's behind you.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I would tell. That's what I would tell the
Awesome.
widows out there.
That's awesome. I'm sure it's going to touch a lot of people because,
Hopefully.
there's so many.
Yeah.
So many out there.
I know.
Or even if men hear it and know, go get help. Go talk to someone.
Yeah, like it's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like we want you to get help.
Right.
We want you to figure out what's going on with you. Get to the bottom of whatever's hurting. That way you can live again.
Right.
Because like Andrew, he died that week that Rachelle died. He never became alive again.
Right.
And I don't want men walking around like that. I want them to figure out what hurts, resolve it, and live again.
Yep.
Don't be a walking
Keep going.
zombie.
Right.
Yeah, like keep going, but be alive while you keep going. And that's a lot of work. It's tough work. I mean, I had to do that myself. And if I can do it, you can do it. It's possible. And you can, look really pretty while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I say that because after Andrew died, I had some friends visit me, some college friends. And one of them, she'll love that I'm saying this. She goes, Sarah, you can be sad, but you need to be hot. And I was like, yes, you're right.
Okay, whatever you say.
Immediately. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she was like, go work out, go get a spray tan, get your hair done. She's like, do all the things, girl, because you can be sad, but you need to be hot. And I was just, I've taken that so seriously this last year. Because it's true. It's like, yeah, I can cry. I can cry about this, but go lift some weights after,
Feel better.
Yeah, feel better.
Yeah.
Like, and I really think what she told me is kind of like the contrast you need to stay alive.
Right.
It's the contrast of like, it's okay to have these really deep, dark emotions and the sadness, but at the same time, having something to look forward to. Mm-hmm. So.
And I think what's hard for people too, even you want to do those things. You want to go out and get a spray tan, do your hair, look normal to yourself.
Yeah.
But then I feel then you have to worry about what all these other people are saying. You're not grieving enough. You're not. It's like you can't win. She's not grieving. She's not this. Look how happy she is. But that's not the reality of how the person actually feels.
Right. You know, and that's something that I actually had to tune out. So after Andrew died, I actually stopped watching TV. I mean, like, it's been so strangely quiet in my home since he's died because I keep all the TVs off. I don't really, yes, I'm on social media because, that's kind of, I enjoy social media. I love memes, it makes me happy, all those kinds of things. But I kind of just tuned all of that out. I kind of tuned out any kind of opinions people were having.
Which is tough.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
It was so necessary because I at the beginning, I was like, ooh, yeah, I don't want to be the girl who bounced back too quick.
Right.
But then I was like, well, you know what? This didn't happen to them.
Right.
This happened to me.
Right.
Like, if I want to smile and look cute and do something, then I should be able to do that. And I think that's another thing that's kind of made me move along my healing journey faster is that I'm very unapologetic about who I am and what I am.
Right.
And even the people around me, I'm like, look, if you can't accept me in my full expression, you can kick rocks. Like, I'm not sticking around to like even know what you think of me.
Yeah.
Like, this is just who I am. I'm a grieving widow that loves to share memes on Instagram and that, is playful in person.
Right.
And if that doesn't make sense to you, then it doesn't have to.
Right. Keep going.
Yeah. Just keep going.
Right.
Like, I want to be surrounded by people who see me for who I am and accept me in my fullness. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's all.
I love it.
I think that's what makes me just move forward too.
Yeah.
I'm just very unapologetic about my grieving and my healing journey.
And you should be.
Yeah.
I mean,
but a lot of women have a hard time with that. Mm-hmm. How is this going to look? What's my mom going to think? Or
exactly.
So,
and everybody's got an opinion,
yeah,
whether you like it or not. So you might as well do what's going to make you happy. Well, thank you for coming today and sharing your story, your family's story.
I know, yeah, and even the execution's coming up and I really hope that brings so much closure to this situation, to to how we're all feeling. So, yeah,
And
I'm ready
you two
for
are
it.
going together.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're gonna go, and that's where I'm very grateful to have friends all over the nation, because we're gonna have some friends that we're gonna stay with that are,
Oh,
yeah, that are very
good.
high energy, that are gonna make this
Perfect.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's gonna be good.
Oh, well, you'll have to let me know how it goes
I know. Yeah, we'll
and how she
reconnect.
does. Yes, for sure, for
We'll
sure.
reconnect,
Yes.
and yeah, I'll let you know all about it. I mean, like, that is the thing. Like, what is this? Like, what am I about to experience?
Yeah, like who even knows?
You
Who do
know,
you ask? Like,
right.
yeah,
Like, this is something that not a lot of people experience in their
right, right.
lifetime.
Very
So I have
surreal.
no idea what to expect.
Well, I'm glad you're going to be there for her,
Oh,
though,
yeah.
because I think that's so important.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
got lucky. She does have you. And you guys are
Yeah.
so close.
And that's the thing. A lot of people, I think, expected Avery to kind of end up, a certain way because of what happened to her.
Right.
And man, if you were to meet her, you would be like, she is one of the strongest women I know. I mean, she inspires me daily, just with who she is and how she's handling this situation and how she even handled her dad. And she was the one who even said, when you do this podcast, make sure to advocate for men's mental health. I mean, that's her focus.
Right.
She wants to make this into something bigger than
Right.
what it is.
Right.
And so, I mean, she's just such a well put together person, considering all the tragedy that's
Right.
happened to her.
She's been through a lot.
Yeah. And so I just she's an inspiration.
Oh,
I just love it. One day she'll tell her story and just blow everyone out of the water.
yes.
It'll be great.
Love it. I love it.
I love it. I love it. I'm so lucky to have her.
Yes.
I'm like the luckiest stepmom ever.
Yes, yes. Oh, all right. Well, I guess we will end this here.
Yeah.
And I don't know, who knows? Maybe we'll have both of you on
Oh
later
my
down the
gosh.
road.
Yes.
And she can tell her story.
Yeah.
And what she's been through as, she was so young.
I know.
Her whole life. She
Yeah.
went through all this stuff.
I think she would be great. She has a story to tell.
Okay, everybody, stay tuned for number 2 down the road, right?
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.